Now, we've got some breaking news for you now, and it's huge. The synagogue killer Jihad al-Shamie rang 999 during his deadly attack, pledging allegiance to the so-called Islamic State, sources have said. The 35-year-old made the call, claiming responsibility for the attack after driving at worshippers in his car outside the Heaton Park Hebrew Synagogue in Crumpsall, Manchester, last Thursday morning, as Jewish worshippers attended for the holy day of Yom Kippur. Just to repeat that, significant development in this huge story. The synagogue killer, Jihad al-Shamie, rang 999 during his deadly attack, pledging allegiance to so-called Islamic State, sources have told GBNews. The 35-year-old made the call, claiming responsibility for the attack after driving at worshippers in his car outside Heaton Park Hebrew Synagogue in Crumpsall, Manchester, last Thursday morning. Let's get some immediate reaction to this astonishing news here in the studio from Nigel Nelson. Nigel, the facts are the facts. It's now abundantly clear beyond any doubt. This was a jihad-related attack. He's phoned 999, claiming himself allegiance to Islamic State, and all those ridiculous claims saying this was something to do with the far right have now been thrown in the dustbin.
Well, I don't think we ever thought he was far right. But yes, I mean, it is sensational news that what the police and MI5 have to work on now is what his links were with Islamic State. Was he a lone wolf? And it was just he radicalised himself in his bedroom.
His father praised Hamas on October the 7th.
I know. But I'm talking about the killer himself, whether or not he did it in his bedroom and radicalised himself, or had links with Islamic State in Syria.
Well, it's just claim. The evidence
I'm not knocking his evidence.
Links to Islamic State.
I know.
He's claiming lone wolf stuff.
He's claiming that. That's fine. What we need to know then, because it's quite serious if there's any kind of network, is what those links with Islamic State are.
OK, but this is the breaking news. Just repeat if you're joining us there. A significant development in this case. The synagogue killer Jihad al-Shamie rang 999 during his deadly attack, pledging allegiance to the so-called Islamic State, sources have told GB News. The 35-year-old made the call, claiming responsibility for the attack after driving at worshippers in his car outside Heaton Park Hebrew Synagogue in Crumpsall, Manchester, last Thursday morning, of course, as Jewish worshippers attended for the holy day of Yom Kippur. And I'm joined now by the former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Metropolitan Police, Kevin Hurley. Kevin, welcome to the show. The facts are coming at us thick and fast. The motivation now seems absolutely to be clear. Let me just repeat the statement that's just been released by the Counter-Terrorism Policing Northwest. And they said, we can confirm that in the initial stages of the attack outside the Heaton Park Hebrews Congregation Synagogue, a call was made by the attacker to the police claiming to pledge allegiance to the so-called Islamic State. So, Kevin, what that suggests to us is that there were two stages to this attack. There was the car attack, then this individual phoned the police, and then he carried on with his murderous rampage. But the motivation, Kevin Hurley, seems to be becoming abundantly clear now.
Yes, and of course the other thing that is a common thread with a lot of these lone attackers is they are narcissists, self-obsessed, and in the case of this one, as with so many, they've got broken relationships behind them. And I think this probably, if one does a bit of analysis on this, gives an indication of those who are most at risk of going down these particular routes. Because for him to take the time and effectively boast shows this was partly all about him, as it so often is with many of these people. You know, the examples of these lone attackers, we've had many. We've had the hacker mugger, who was the shoe bomber, who tried to blow himself up on a plane going across the Atlantic. So clearly a person with personal problems. Then if we look at the guy who carried out the attacks at Fishmongers Hall, another lone attacker like that, the one who attempted to murder people in Streatham, another lone attacker, the man who drove his car into people on Westminster Bridge. They've all got this common thread of their narcissism wrapped up in their obsession with extremist Islam And I'm not quite sure how one might approach that to try to identify people who are most at risk of completing these kind of offences. The big thing I take from this is this nasty piece of work clearly is a narcissist.
Kevin Hurley, of course, we had some further information last week, and that was the father of this individual posted himself on social media in the immediate aftermath of the Hamas terrorist invasion of Israel, of course, 2 years ago yesterday, that those men were doing the work of Allah. Allah's men were doing that work. The son has now, clearly committed this terror attack on British soil. So the father played a part, you'd have to assume, in that radicalisation. The father, of course, condemned the statement, but the evidence seems to stand up. We also learned this individual was wanted on bail for an alleged rape in the area. Now he phones through claiming to have allegiance with Islamic State. And the questions will be abundant, and they'll be along these lines, Kevin Hurley. How on earth can people like this go undetected in Britain for so long?
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. I think the people who would assist in preventing these are family members, friends, people who know them. And it's incumbent on them to say, there's something not right with our John or Jihadi John or whatever his name is at the time, to say, maybe we need help. But the problem with it is, it's very difficult for any group within any family, whatever their religious background, to say, we think our son is going wrong. I mean, it's happened before. I was approached once when I was Police and Crime Commissioner in Surrey, where someone said to me, I'm very concerned about what my son is saying every time he comes back from the mosque. Please, can you push him towards some form of counselling, which of course was the PREVENT programme. But it comes back to this, Martin. It's incumbent on people out there in society, the families, the communities, in most of these cases, people involved in the mosque, to say, this person is saying stuff we really don't like, and he seems to have problems in his life. He's got divorced, he's been arrested by the police. Should we talk to someone about this? And the answer has to be yes.
Well, I'm joined in the studio by GBNews' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. I'm also joined by the Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby, Sarah Pochin. Sarah Pochin, perhaps I could come to you. You've walked into the studio expecting to talk about a poll, talking about broken Britain. We have a story which exemplifies broken Britain, and Jihad al-Shamie calling the police, we hear, and pledging allegiance to Islamic State.
Absolutely, Martin. The fact is, for someone like myself who's worked in the courts for 20 years, there's several things here that strike alarm bells. First of all, you've got somebody who is on bail for rape. Now, I don't know the facts of alleged rape. I don't know the facts of that case. But certainly I would have been very reluctant in my time to put someone on bail, depending on, as I say, the facts for a rape charge. So that's the first thing. He's called Jihad. I mean, who calls their son Jihad? It's not a completely harmless name, is it? And then we've got the father himself tweeting that this is Allah's work. Now, I have two of what I call my own Lucy Connollys that are now out of prison, but on licence for tweeting nothing like as insightful as that. When are we going to address this two-tier justice system? Because why wasn't that father's tweet, the father of Jihad, who's on bail for rape, why wasn't that tweet picked up by our institutions that are so quick to come down on the likes of anyone that is now accused of being extremist and far right? What about these extremists? They're clearly extremists. And my other question would be, I believe that this Jihad al-Shamie wasn't part of the PREVENT programme, but I can't really believe that this family was not on some kind of register with the police. Now, the police do an amazing job. Our security services do an amazing job at stopping so much that we never hear about. However, there's a lot of alarm bells ringing here.
Do you think Kevin Hurley had a point there? He said there's a duty of communities and families to speak out if they see people becoming radicalised, but we seem to have a problem with that particular instance within the Muslim community. I have Muslim commentators on all the time, Muslims themselves, who say that the Muslim community for too long turns a blind eye to problems within its own community.
Well, and we know, don't we? I speak very clearly and loudly about the whole fact that I believe there's a parallel system of law and order that runs through the Muslim community with their own Sharia courts and Sharia laws. You know, I believe that within that community, they believe they police themselves, and that I clearly don't know this family, obviously, but, you know, so I don't know what kind of policing goes on there, but I speak very clearly about there is one set of rules in this country, and these are the rules that you and I and the rest of us live by. So maybe they do know in this community, maybe they do know at the mosque what's going on, but they are clearly keeping it within their own community.
Okay, Sarah Pershing, stick with us throughout the rest of this hour if you could, but let's get to my next guest now. I'm joined by the Labour Party MP for Dartford, Jim Dixon. Jim, welcome to the show. Again, you were due to come on and comment on Kemi Badenoch's speech. Perhaps we can get to that soon. But in the first instance, Jim Dixon, if I could I get your visceral or your immediate reaction to this breaking news line now? If an apology if you haven't heard it, I'll repeat it for the benefit of you and our viewers. And that's Jihad al-Shamie. That's the synagogue attacker in Manchester, phoned the police during that terror attack after the use of the car before the further rampage, pledging allegiance, we hear, from counter-terrorism police to Islamic State. This will add further fuel to the fire. We simply have no idea who is amongst us.
Well, look, this is a live police investigation, and I don't think it's particularly responsible to comment on each individual fact as it emerges while the police are still investigating. The police have just announced,
Jim Dixon, the police have just announced he phoned and pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. You don't need to comment on the individual case. These are the facts. What's your reaction to the fact that the perpetrator himself is admitting he was influenced by Islamic State?
I'm not going to comment on a live police investigation. The most important thing here, let's be clear, is that those families of the victims get justice. And I wouldn't want to say anything that prejudices that. Clearly, there are going to be bits of information and news that arises as this investigation continues. I'm sure as people make information available to the police, but I don't think a running commentary is particularly useful, other than to say I feel very confident that the police will do a good job
in getting to the
bottom of why this happened.
Jim Dixon, a lot of people are listening to you now and thinking, why haven't you got the guts just to say something about this case? OK, forget about the individual case itself. Now, we have a situation here where Jewish people have been killed, and the responsibility by the perpetrator himself is claiming allegiance to Islamic State. Can you not just say something along the lines of, I totally condemn these kind of individuals, and we must do more as a Labour government. We must do more as the Prime Minister, as the Home Secretary, to clamp down on this kind of extremism on British soil?
I think the best thing we can do in this situation is to give every support to the police in finding out what happened. I think the government's been very clear that it has no truck whatsoever with extremism of any kind, religious extremism, IS, Jihad, any of those things. I think we've been clear on every occasion we've had an opportunity to say that is the case. Where this concerns an individual investigation, I think it's best to let the police get on with it so that we get justice for the families and so that we can learn from this so that it doesn't happen again and we're not in this situation in a few weeks' time, 6 months' time or whenever, with families having suffered the results of extremism and terrorism.